"You're not on this list." The flight attendant's voice cut through the polished calm of the first-class cabin, and so did the sound of tearing paper. She'd just ripped his boarding pass in half. Walter Greaves didn't move. 82, cardigan sweater, scuffed brown shoes, no assistant, no flashy watch. To them, he was just another confused old man who wandered into the wrong part of the plane. What they didn't know was that in 10 minutes, 6 U.S. airports would shut down, because the man they just humiliated held the final FAA clearance key in his back pocket. But right now, he was just invisible. Tiffany Rowe, the flight attendant in a flawless navy vest, folded her arms as she blocked the aisle. "This area is reserved for qualified first-class passengers, not walk-ins." Walter simply looked at her, not angry, just tired. "I'm assigned to 2A, he said, holding the torn pieces of his boarding pass gently like they were made of silk. She scoffed. "Not anymore." A few passengers watched, pretending not to. One man even smirked. Walter knelt slowly to gather the paper, his movement careful, his silence deeper than shame. He didn't argue. He didn't raise his voice. Instead, he tucked the pieces into his jacket pocket and reached for his phone. No one paid attention, not yet. But that would change. "Tell us where you're watching from. And if you've ever seen quiet dignity shake the world, you're going to want to stay for this flight." "Unbelievable," someone muttered behind him. Walter heard it, but he didn't flinch. He made his way toward the back, not out of obedience, but out of something deeper, something older. That quiet, exhausted instinct of people who've learned that arguing rarely changes minds poisoned by pride. He found an empty seat near the rear of business class and settled in. As he folded his coat, a younger flight attendant approached, her voice lower, eyes darting. "Sir, I'm sorry, but your name didn't show up on our iPad system. That's why Tiffany—" "I know," Walter interrupted gently. "Not your fault." She hesitated. "Would you like some water?" Walter smiled, thinly. "No, thank you. Just give me a few minutes of peace, if that's still allowed on this aircraft." She nodded and walked off, glancing back once. She didn't recognize him, but she knew something was off. Walter slipped the phone from his inner pocket and opened an app that didn't exist on public app stores. A blue screen lit up. The header, FAA clearance anchor, level fraccess. He tapped in a passcode. Then a second one. Then a third. And finally, his name appeared on screen. "Welcome, Director W. Greaves." He selected Layer 1, Shadow Signal, Civilian Passenger Flag, Ethics Protocol. Status, Submitted. Awaiting Tier 2 authorization. Back in first class, Tiffany was still chatting with a young man in a business suit, laughing, pointing toward the front galley. She had no idea. Walter leaned back, no fury, no plan for revenge, just resolve. He didn't need an apology. He didn't want compensation. But if the industry he built had forgotten how to respect the very people it once served, then maybe it was time to remind them. Quietly, systemically, permanently. "Wait, was that Walter Greaves?" The question came low, almost a whisper, from a man seated in 3D. He leaned toward his wife, a woman with silver blonde hair and sharp eyes. She frowned. "Who?" "Greaves. He used to run the entire infrastructure division for the feds, the Denver expansion, Boston, Atlanta. He built half the country's air grid." His wife turned to look toward the back of the plane, where Walter now sat calmly, eyes closed. "You sure that's him?" "I was at a symposium 5 years ago." He walked on stage, and the room went silent. The man's a legend. Word traveled fast, at least in first class. 2 rows over, a young tech executive opened his tablet and discreetly searched the name. The first result? Walter Greaves, former Director of National Infrastructure, FAA Senior Ethics Advisor. He looked up. His expression changed. But Tiffany? Still oblivious. She was too busy chatting with the co-pilot through the curtain, laughing at something about passengers who dress like it's 1985. Behind her, one of the cabin crew whispered to another, "That old guy. He just flagged a Tier 1 ethics protocol. System pinged headquarters." The younger crew member blinked. "You're kidding." "Nope. Whoever he is, he's got deep clearance." The mood shifted subtly. A few passengers stopped talking. A silence settled over the front cabin, not loud, but tight. And Walter still hadn't moved. He sat with the calm of someone who didn't need to prove anything. He didn't need anyone to remember his name, because the system already had, and now it was listening. At exactly 9:22 a.m., the first alert pinged at the FAA's Denver Regional Hub. A blinking red message cut across a supervisor's console. "Tier 1 ethics escalation. Flight 3118, flagged by Level 4 clearance." The supervisor blinked. Only 5 people in the country had that kind of access. He clicked deeper. Walter Greaves. His chair rolled back. "Sir?" an assistant asked. "Pause all incoming landings connected to Skynova Air," he ordered, "and flag the flight manually for audit." 10 seconds later, air traffic control in Salt Lake City lost real-time clearance sync with Denver International. 2 more terminals, Phoenix and Kansas City, reported similar lags. By 9:27 a.m., 6 major airports were operating under manual override, something that hadn't happened in over a decade. Back on the plane, no one knew. Tiffany still poured champagne for a young hedge fund manager, laughing like nothing had happened. But in the cockpit, a notification buzzed quietly on the captain's screen. "Priority FAA Ethics Review. Flight 3118. Request immediate verification of manifest." He frowned, turned to the co-pilot. "Did you see anything strange during boarding?" "Nope," the co-pilot said, shaking his head. "Cabin seems normal." The captain sighed, opened the passenger log, and paused. His finger hovered over one name. Greaves. Walter A. He knew that name. In 2016, during a training summit in D.C., Walter Greaves had spoken about silent accountability. He'd warned airlines that one day, ethics violations wouldn't just be judged by public outrage, but by embedded systems. Systems like this. The captain stood, unbuckled his harness. "I'm going to the cabin." Meanwhile, Walter sat still, eyes closed. He wasn't waiting for drama. He wasn't hoping for a scene. He was waiting for the system, his system, to do what it was built to do. And right now, it had just started. By 9:32 a.m., something subtle shifted inside the cabin. The flight crew stopped smiling. The bubbly tone disappeared. Voices got quieter. Eye contact got shorter. There wasn't a public announcement. No overhead chime, no alert. But frequent flyers could feel it. Something was wrong. One of the flight attendants who'd ignored Walter earlier now kept glancing back toward row 12, where he sat quietly, hands folded, eyes on the window. In first class, whispers were picking up speed. "I think something happened at the FAA," one woman murmured to her husband. "That old man, I heard he has federal access, Tier 4 level." "Are you serious? Then why is he back there in coach?" No one had answers. But the tension, it was building. In the cockpit, the captain had returned, visibly unsettled. "Get me a direct line to FAA Compliance Command," he told his crew. "We're not flying blind on this." He looked at the manifest again. Greaves, Walter A. How had they not recognized him? At that moment, a second ping came through. "Alert! National Infrastructure Flag pending. Audit status active." The captain didn't need translation. This wasn't just an internal ethics ping. It meant the flight itself had been flagged as part of a national oversight alert. That happened maybe once every 7 to 10 years, and only when the person involved was powerful enough to impact federal systems mid-air. He stood up again, this time with a heavy breath. "Where is he sitting?" he asked quietly. One of the attendants hesitated. "Row 12C, window." Back in row 12, Walter hadn't moved, but his phone vibrated once. He glanced down. The message was short. Sky Nova internal ethics score, 52%, failing. Pending auto-escalation. Walter nodded slowly to himself. The algorithm was already at work. The system was gathering everything. Tone of voice, passenger reports, video footage, even eye contact. Every small moment on this flight was being recorded and run through a model he'd helped design. Not to punish, but to hold accountable. If you've ever felt like no one was watching when someone did you wrong, you're not alone. Just keep watching. At the front of the plane, Tiffany finally noticed the change. The captain was standing by the curtain, no longer casual. He wasn't looking at passengers. He was looking for one. And for the first time all morning, Tiffany stopped talking. Captain Joel Rankin didn't walk like a man delivering bad news. He moved with quiet urgency, shoulders square, gaze fixed, as he stepped past row 6, then row 9, ignoring the curious stares from passengers, sensing something wasn't normal. At row 12C, he paused. "Mr. Greaves?" he asked, voice low. Walter looked up, calm, measured. His expression didn't carry resentment, only quiet expectation. "I'm Captain Rankin. May I have a moment?" Walter gestured to the empty seat beside him. "Please." The captain sat down. He didn't beat around the bush. "Sir, I received a notification. Tier 4 ethics flag. It came from your clearance code. I assume that wasn't a mistake." Walter didn't blink. "No, Captain, it wasn't." A pause. Captain Rankin exhaled, adjusting the cuffs of his uniform. "I want to say this clearly. I didn't know who you were when you boarded, but I know now, and I want to do right by you." Walter tilted his head, still calm. Doing right by me would have been acknowledging that seat 2A had my name on it, long before someone looked up my title. The captain nodded slowly. He deserved that. "We're currently under review. 6 airports have dropped to manual, and Sky Nova's ethics score just triggered internal escalation. That means this flight is now under federal audit, in real time." "I know," Walter said simply. "You could have waited, filed a complaint after landing, but you didn't." "No," Walter replied, "because this isn't just about me. It's about the culture this airline chose to nurture, silence." Captain Rankin looked around the cabin, passengers staring, unsure whether to be scared or impressed. Then he said something no one expected. "Mr. Greaves, would you be willing to return to first class as a guest of the flight crew?" Walter didn't smile, but his eyes softened. "No, Captain, but thank you for asking." The plane hadn't landed, but on the ground, the ripple had already become a wave. At 9:44 a.m., a secure call lit up inside the Federal Advisory Network. The caller ID read, "Walter A. Greaves, Clearance Keyholder, Ethics Architect." The recipient, Clara Baines, current Chief of Operational Oversight for the FAA. She hadn't heard from Walter in over a year. She picked up immediately. "Walter, are you safe?" "I'm fine," he replied. "But Sky Nova Flight 318 is not." She straightened in her chair. "What happened?" Walter didn't waste words. "There was an incident involving a flight attendant, a systemic one. The ethics trigger was not about personal insult, Clara. It was about a pattern, a design failure." Clara didn't ask for proof. She knew Walter. He didn't flag flights lightly, and he never used his override key unless the issue posed a threat to the integrity of national airspace policy. "I need a Level 3 audit initiated," he continued. "Simultaneously, I'm requesting a freeze on all automated clearance renewals for Sky Nova's top-tier hubs until this case is reviewed." "That's going to cause major disruptions," Clara said quietly. Walter didn't flinch. So did ignoring small acts of disrespect, until they became culture. Clara was silent for a moment. Then she said, "Consider it done." By 9:47 a.m., 3 terminals connected to Sky Nova's corporate access licenses were suspended pending internal ethics audit, and by 10 o'clock a.m., whispers were spreading in FAA Slack channels. "Did you hear? Greaves just flagged a flight in midair. 6 airports locked." He pulled the ethics anchor. Over in the press room of the Aviation Review, a junior editor caught the chatter. He looked up, stunned. "Wait, Walter Greaves just flagged what? You ever seen a single decision ripple through 6 cities before a plane even lands? It's happening. And it all started in row 12. By 10:12 a.m., the aviation world was on fire, and the plane was still in the air. On the ground, push alerts began to hit phones in aviation circles. FAA freezes Sky Nova clearances after ethics violation flagged mid-flight. Sources confirm. Flag initiated by former federal director Walter Greaves. Inside Sky Nova's corporate HQ in Arlington, Virginia, the CEO's executive assistant burst into the boardroom mid-meeting. "Sir, you need to see this." She handed him a tablet. He didn't blink, just stared at the headline. "Flight 3118 flagged for ethics review by FAA clearance anchor." He scrolled, saw the name, Walter Greaves. And then, the face. "Oh my God." He stood up without a word, stepped into the hallway, and called legal. "We have a problem, a real one." Back in the sky, things were changing. Tiffany had noticed. The pilot had walked back to talk to that old man. Flight attendants were whispering in clusters near the galley. Even the first-class passengers, once sipping mimosas, were now watching her with subtle discomfort. Something was off, and she felt it in her chest. She approached the galley and pulled aside the junior flight attendant. "What's going on?" The girl hesitated. "You didn't hear?" "Hear what?" The junior leaned in. "Row 12C, the guy you humiliated? That's Walter Greaves. He designed the FAA ethics clearance system." Tiffany's face drained of color. No, that can't be right." The girl nodded. "It's already hit news alerts. FAA froze multiple airports. They're calling this a federal-level escalation." Tiffany stood frozen. She thought back to earlier that morning. The smirk, the condescension, the way she ripped his ticket without hesitation. Now, the weight of it all hit her like cabin pressure at 40,000 feet. Meanwhile, in seat 2A, finally vacant, an off-duty pilot had been quietly moved up from economy. But he didn't sit comfortably. He watched row 12. He saw the man who used to shake the hands of presidents, now calmly gazing out the window like none of it mattered. And maybe that's what made it worse for Tiffany. Walter didn't need to yell. He didn't need to post a video. He just pressed a single button and let the system speak for him. Ever seen someone realize they messed with the wrong man while still stuck on the same plane? Stay buckled. We're not done. At 11:08 a.m., Flight 3118 began its descent into Chicago O'Hare. But it wasn't routine. No cheerful announcement, no tray collection, just tension so thick it clung to the air like humidity before a thunderstorm. In the cockpit, Captain Rankin had received final FAA instructions. Expedited landing approved. Ground ethics oversight team en route. That almost never happened. "Cabin crew, prepare for landing," he said over the intercom, voice flat. Tiffany, standing stiff near the front galley, barely moved. She'd heard. Everyone had. Row 12 was still silent. Walter hadn't shifted. Hadn't spoken since the captain sat beside him an hour earlier. He didn't need to. His presence now carried the weight of consequence. On the ground, the scene was surreal. 3 black Suburbans waited near the terminal, each marked DOT Oversight, Ethics Division. Inside the arrivals hall, a small crowd of reporters had already gathered, tipped off by a leak from an FAA junior staffer. "We're hearing someone on this flight is behind the clearance shutdowns." "Walter Greaves? Are you kidding me?" "We've got to get a statement." Inside Sky Nova's regional office, the legal team was scrambling. "Who cleared Tiffany to lead that cabin?" one exec barked. "She had a pending HR flag from 3 weeks ago, unresolved." Well, now she's national news. Back on the plane, the wheels touched down. Smooth landing, but no applause. Instead, passengers sat unusually still as the aircraft taxied toward a remote gate, away from the normal terminals. The intercom crackled. "Ladies and gentlemen, please remain seated. We'll be deplaning shortly under special instructions." Tiffany's hands were shaking. She turned toward the cockpit. "Captain, what's happening?" He didn't look at her. Instead, a calm voice came over the cabin speakers. "This is Captain Rankin. For passenger awareness, a federal review team is waiting outside. They will be boarding momentarily. We ask for full cooperation." Gasps, murmurs. A few people took out their phones. Row 12? Still silent. Walter reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small leather folio. Inside, 2 FAA credentials, both outdated, but still respected. He slipped them back in without flashing them. He wasn't here for show. The plane door opened. 3 officials stepped inside. Suits, badges. Calm, but unmistakably firm. "Passenger Walter Greaves?" one asked. Walter rose slowly. "I'm here. We appreciate your cooperation. The DOT Oversight Committee would like to speak with you briefly before the general deplaning begins." Walter nodded and walked down the aisle with measured steps. Not rushed, not proud, just steady. As he passed Tiffany, he didn't look at her, but the look on her face said everything. Shame, regret, and something else. Fear, not of punishment, but of the realization that her moment of unchecked arrogance had just changed her entire life. Outside, the news cameras caught the door opening, and for the first time in a decade, the name Walter Greaves returned to national headlines, not for a keynote speech or infrastructure bill, but for reminding an entire industry that ethics isn't optional. You ever seen a man walk off a plane like he never left the cockpit? Because sometimes power doesn't shout, it lands. By 2:20 p.m., less than 4 hours after Flight 318 touched down, the press conference began. Skynova's CEO, Graham Dillard, stood behind the mic, pale, tight-jawed, a far cry from his usual polished confidence. Behind him was a screen looping the same headline across 3 networks. Walter Greaves flags mid-air ethics violation. FAA initiates national review. The room was packed. Cameras, notepads, microphones from CNN, Aviation Weekly, even regional affiliates. Everyone wanted a quote. Graham cleared his throat. "First and foremost, I want to personally apologize to Mr. Walter Greaves. What occurred aboard Flight 318 this morning was not only inappropriate, it was unacceptable." Flashbulbs popped. Reporters leaned forward. "At Skynova, we pride ourselves on excellence, but excellence doesn't matter without integrity. I have spoken directly with the FAA. Effective immediately, the flight attendant involved has been suspended pending full investigation." He paused. "And starting this week, we are launching a top-down ethics retraining initiative for all flight crew personnel, in partnership with the FAA Oversight Division." A hand shot up. A sharp voice from the 3rd row. "Is it true that Greaves's action caused 6 airports to lose automated clearance sync?" Graham didn't flinch. "Yes, and that action exposed blind spots in our internal clearance system. We've relied too long on brand reputation to protect us from accountability." Another reporter called out, "Will there be any consequences for senior leadership?" A longer pause. Then, "I've submitted a preliminary offer of resignation to the board pending final review." Gasps. Across the country, reactions were swift. On aviation Twitter, "That flight attendant picked the wrong passenger today. Greaves walked off that plane like he still ran the FAA. Skynova better rebrand quick. No one forgets a federal ethics audit." At FAA HQ, Clara Baines met with her internal team. "This is not about punishing a single airline," she said. "This is about setting the bar again. Greaves didn't pull rank, he pulled the lever we built together, and it worked." She paused, then turned to her chief of compliance. "Draft a nationwide ethics charter. Passenger respect metrics, transparent crew behavior audits. I want Walter's signature on it before rollout. And what about Tiffany? She didn't attend the press conference. She was escorted off Skynova property that morning by HR, phone turned in, ID badge deactivated. Rumors said she was lawyering up, but no one from the airline was defending her. In a private Slack channel, one flight crew member wrote, "This wasn't about race. It was about power used wrong, and karma found her at 30,000 feet. As for Walter, he sat in a quiet room at the FAA field office. He wasn't angry. He wasn't triumphant. He was tired. Clara walked in, holding a manila folder. "We're ready for your review of the charter." Walter looked up. "Good. Let's make sure this never has to happen mid-air again. Power doesn't come from raising your voice. It comes from knowing when to say nothing and letting the system you built speak for you." 2 weeks later, in a private conference room inside the FAA headquarters in Washington, D.C., a document sat on the table. At the top, bolded in federal font, Passenger Respect and Ethics Act, Pre-A, a federal aviation reform charter. It was 23 pages long, and one signature away from becoming the most sweeping ethics reform in U.S. commercial flight history. Walter Greaves held the pen. He didn't rush. He scanned every line with the same precision he used back when he helped build the original FAA clearance anchor system in the 1990s. To most, it looked like a technical document. To him, it was a cultural reset. The charter included the Passenger Respect Index, PRI, a new metric evaluating flight crew interactions, with real-time reporting via passenger feedback and AI-supported behavior monitoring. Automated Accountability Flags, AAF, designed to trigger mid-flight alerts when ethics violations are detected, without needing a formal complaint. Mandatory cultural sensitivity training every 18 months for all flight attendants, pilots, and ground crew. The Greaves Clause, a federal requirement that any individual holding a Tier 4 clearance may trigger industry review without the need for post-incident approval. Walter closed the folder gently. "You sure about this?" Clara Baines asked, standing at his side. He nodded. "I didn't ask to become a symbol, but if my silence on that plane could make the system speak louder, it's worth it." Then he signed. Walter A. Greaves, Senior Advisor, FAA Ethics Reform, former clearance anchor, architect click. One pen stroke. The room didn't erupt into applause. No champagne, no cameras, just quiet resolve. The effect, though, immediate. Within 48 hours, 3 major airlines signed on to Pre-A. 4 airports began real-time PRI testing in terminals. Internal crew messages across Skynova read, "Your tone matters. We are all being scored now." On talk shows, Walter's story went viral again, not because he lashed out, because he didn't have to. He made one quiet move, one commentator said, and reminded the country that real power wears silence like armor. In Chicago, at a local cafe not far from O'Hare, a young flight attendant sat alone with her tablet. She watched a replay of the Skynova press conference, then reread the charter. She wasn't angry. She wasn't afraid. She was humbled. Because what happened to Tiffany could have happened to any of them, if they weren't careful. And what of Walter? He didn't return to his old post. He declined TV interviews, politely turned down a federal medal. He spent most days walking his dog, reading, and answering quiet emails from young FAA interns asking, "Sir, what's the best advice for someone building a system that lasts?" His reply was always the same. Build for the quietest passenger, the one who doesn't speak. They're usually the one holding the pen. Some stories don't end with a bang. They end with a signature, and a new standard written in its place. 2 months had passed. The world had moved on, at least on the surface. Airlines had adopted the Passenger Respect Index. News cycles had shifted to other stories. But at Gate C-14 in Atlanta International, something very different was happening. Tiffany Reynolds stood silently before the newly installed flight ethics display kiosk. It was subtle, just a curved touchscreen in a polished silver frame. Nothing flashy, no ads, just a single sentence glowing across the top. Every passenger matters. Every voice shapes the skies. Underneath, a sliding scale showed the real-time PRI score for the gate's last 10 flights. Crew behavior ratings, passenger satisfaction logs, audio moderation alerts. Tiffany didn't need anyone to explain how it worked. She'd read every page of the reform charter after her termination. She knew that the system now spoke for the silent ones. She also knew she used to be the reason they didn't speak at all. A family approached the gate beside her, a black mother with 2 young daughters, maybe 6 and 8. The older girl pointed to the kiosk. "Mommy, look, it shows if the crew's nice or not." The mother smiled gently. "That's right, baby. It means people like you can speak up." Tiffany turned slightly away. That used to be her uniform on the other side of the gate. Now, she was just another traveler. Across the country, meanwhile, Flight 318 had become an industry case study. In training rooms from Seattle to Miami, crew trainees were shown security camera footage, anonymized, of the incident. A voiceover explained how one moment of unchecked behavior led to the grounding of 6 airports, millions in losses, and a permanent federal charter. It wasn't about ego, the trainer would say. It was about culture, the kind that grows when no one's watching, until one day, someone is. And Walter? He never returned to Chicago O'Hare, not physically, but his signature was everywhere. Every airline signed the Greaves Clause. Every airport implemented PRI gate displays. Every training program began with one slide, design with dignity in mind. At home, Walter sat by his window with his dog at his feet and his coffee in hand. He wasn't watching the news. He didn't need updates. The system was working. That was enough. At Gate C14, the announcement came on. "Now boarding Group 1 for Flight 726 to Denver." Tiffany picked up Hezer's small carry-on. She didn't move yet. She kept watching the screen. The score for the last flight, 9.7, 10, high respect compliance. And under it, a rotating quote. "The quietest people often carry the heaviest truths. WG." She closed her eyes for a moment, then boarded quietly. No attitude, no edge, just awareness. In that moment, the story had come full circle. A flight that once silenced a man had become the reason others could finally speak. A passenger who said nothing had taught an entire industry how to listen. And a woman who once thought power came from authority learned what real authority looks like when used right. Because justice doesn't always come loud. Sometimes it boards last and sits in silence until the whole system hears it land.